Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for coming back. For those who are coming for the first time, um, on this channel, I do post content, social work content, and anything to do with social care, really, and other related fields, really. So, in today's video, I'm just going to talk to you or give you sort of like 10 things that may shock you if you're a social worker moving to come and work in England, especially coming from Africa. Why Africa? Because that's where I came from. So I'm partly giving my own personal, experiences or a personal account of what I went through or things that kind of shocked me when I came to England for the first time. In this account, I'm also going to be giving some, bit of flavor into the cultural differences as well as the challenges that is faced by an African social worker who is, or African trained social worker who is actually working in England. As you know, moving to a new country, it's quite exciting, but also daunting at the same time, especially if you're coming from a continent or culture which is kind of, completely different from where you'll be practicing. So for me, I think as an African trained social worker or somebody who trained in Africa and has been practicing in Africa before I moved over to England, there were a few things which I kind of, saw which shocked me or things which surprised me. Obviously when I moved over to England, some of the things is things which I kind of knew about before I moved over through my own reading and through my interactions with other colleagues who had moved over before me. But obviously, even if you have heard about these things or even if you have read about these things, but it's slightly different when you yeah, so it will be slightly different, obviously, experiencing these things firsthand as compared to hearing about it or even reading about it. So some of the things which I'm going to be talking about are more or less related to the profession, but some of these may be applicable to anybody who is moving from Africa coming to live in England, really. So the first thing which I think most of you might guess would be the weather. My gosh. Obviously, I would say if you are, if you've lived and trained in Africa or, lived the rest of your life in Africa and moving over to England, the first thing that may shock you when you move over to England is the weather. Why? Because, England is known for its cold, wet, and sometimes unpredictable climate. In terms of, one single day can have different weather patterns. It might be warm, it might be sunny, it might be raining in the next minute, and it takes a lot, to get used to that kind of weather, especially when you're coming from sunny Africa or where you have got how many months of sunshine in a year. So those are some of the things that you may need to contend with. So it's easy for you to find yourself feeling cold, damp, and miserable most of the time, especially in the winter months because of the weather. And I think to an extent you may also struggle to adjust to the shorter days and the longer nights, which can affect your mood to an extent. It can affect your energy levels to an extent. So you need obviously to invest, in warm and waterproof clothing the moment you arrive or the moment, before even arrive. You will need to make sure that the house that you're living in is well heated up, lighting is good. And those are some of the things that you just need to learn to live with in terms of the changing seasons and changing weather patterns now and again, when you come to practice in England. So that's all about the weather. Obviously, like I said, it can rain and rain forever, even for the whole day, it can spend the whole day just raining. Right, moving over then to point number two is around the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy. Um, you know, for me, coming from Africa, where obviously I'm not saying where I was working in Africa, there's no bureaucracy, but I think in England it's quite important to highlight that it's a highly regulated and structured society or profession that we practice in a sense where you need to follow many rules, procedures, and protocols for almost everything that you do. You may find, when I was in Africa, there was a lot of free play in terms of the way you would do things, whereas here there's lots of rules, protocols, procedures that you need to follow in almost everything, in every, the work that you'll be doing really. So it's possible that you may find yourself dealing with a lot of paperwork. Well, obviously most of the things are now, computerized, but you might be filling in forms, applications, referrals, registrations, different checks, inspections here and there, both in your own personal life as well as in your professional, capacity really. You may also encounter many delays, waiting times, queues, which can be frustrating sometimes, time consuming. So it's something that calls for somebody to be really patient. You need to be organized, highly compliant, and you need to learn to navigate these complex and sometimes confusing systems, of administrative and governance, bureaucracy really. When you need something, say for example, something to do with the budget, you need to support a family, it needs to go through your senior practitioner or your team manager, and then you to head of service. Sometimes gets approval in an finance panel. There are many ways local authorities try to manage budgets. Whereas where I was practicing in Africa, sometimes when you need to support a family, as long as it's in the budget, it's for you to make sure that it gets done. And as soon as you identify the need, you get the support where it's needed. So that's something which I found quite a bit different here. So whereas, even if you have identified need, if it takes 2-3 days for whoever holds the purse to authorize, it will take 3 days for the family to get what they need. Whereas where I was practicing in Africa, once you identify the need, and as long as it's in the budget, you just process and finance, processes it, and then there it goes straight away. So I think bureaucracy is other thing that you may also find. When you come, obviously when you come, you might think, it's something that you may not necessarily witness, but believe me, it's also still there. Point number three, this might surprise some people, but it's important to take note that England is one of the most diverse European countries that you can think of. It's a multicultural, multi-ethnic society where you meet people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, languages, lifestyles, and you may find yourself exposed to a variety of perspective, opinions, values, and beliefs, some of which may be quite different from your own. So as a professional, some of the things that you may find yourself encountering is you may also encounter some stereotypes or prejudice or discrimination to an extent, some of it which is subtle, some of it which is overt, based on your race, your ethnicity or nationality, or even your accent or even your appearance. Those are some of the things that you may need to contend with, and and face head on as we are practicing in England really. But as diversity brings, lots of positives really. So it's important to know that, there's lots of positives that can also be derived from working with a diverse population. So I think what I'm trying to say also there is you need to be open-minded, to be respectful, you need to be tolerant, you need to learn to appreciate, and you need to learn to celebrate the diversity and richness of the society that you're working in. So that's it in terms of diversity. So it's the same with the service user that we'll be working with. Obviously, if the society is so diverse, it means also the service users that we are working with are gonna be as diverse, as they can be. The next point is around the social norms, which is point number 4. So one of the things that will shock you when you move to England is the social norms. Generally, English people are quite polite, reserved society, where you need to follow certain etiquette when you go to the shops, when you go to the pubs, restaurants. You need to follow some certain manners, customs, interaction with others. You may find yourself expected to say, please, thank you, sorry, excuse me a lot, avoid direct and confrontational, communication and stuff like that. You may also encounter some, cultural, differences in terms of personal space, issues around eye contact, physical contact, humor, and sarcasm, some of which you might not find to be sarcastic, you may not find to be humorous at all, but that's the way of life. And there will be some phrases that people do use on a daily basis that you may not necessarily have been used to, but you need to actually get used to. Some of it might be confusing, some of it might be awkward, but you need to be courteous. You need to be discreet in some of the things that you'll be doing. It needs a lot of diplomacy to kind of navigate the society, and you need to learn to adapt and conform to the social norms and expectations, really. So that's it in terms of the social norms. People like going to the pub, even watching, football in the pub. Even if you've got TV at home, people just like to be hanging around in the pub, things like that. So there are things that you may need to kind of get used to as you start to practice, in England, really. And then point number 5 is around the lifestyle. The lifestyle. Yeah. So the lifestyle it's quite fast paced. You know, living in England or in the UK in general, it's a busy society where you need to balance your work, family, and personal life in such a manner that none of those three things should suffer: your work life, your family life, and your personal life as well. So it's easy for you, to find yourself working long and demanding hours, especially in social work. Wow, most local authorities you do start work at 9, finish at 5, but it's rare that you finish at 5 at the dot. Sometimes you may end up getting home around 7, sometimes 8 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock, because it's quite a demanding and fast-paced, work environment that we work in. And sometimes, because of the commute, sometimes it will be, an overcrowded, tube, or it's stressful to commute. But sometimes, like me, I used to drive an hour and a half to go to work and come back every day. The living expenses, you need to consider all those kind of things. Sometimes, I remember when before my family followed, came over, I was living, in shared accommodation. Sometimes it can be cramped. Those are some of the things that you may need to contend with. And sometimes, because of the pressures of the work that we do, sometimes you think that weekend I'm gonna be resting, but you might not even find time to actually rest, or you might struggle even to find time, even money for leisure, even money for entertainment or even socializing, which can affect your well-being and to an extent your happiness as well. So you need to be somebody who's very flexible, you know, enjoy yourself on a budget, be resilient, be resourceful, learn to manage your time, your budget, and your stress levels, interact well with your colleagues, and be able to, share experiences and stuff like that. One of the things also which I might mention in terms of the lifestyle is obviously coming from Africa, where we have got a belief that it takes a village to raise a child, whereas in England it's more of a which term can I say? So more of a nuclear family oriented kind of society where it is you, your wife, and your kids, and then that's it. But obviously, coming from Africa, you've got cousins, brother here and there, and you need to visit them and stuff like that. But generally, it's a lifestyle where family is everything basically. And it's easy for you to come across clients or service users who will tell you that I don't have any family member, or the last time I spoke to my brother or to my sister was 10 years ago, and we don't communicate. So that kind of lifestyle, it is what it is. You just have to deal with it. But obviously, it's your role also to make sure that you support them holistically in making sure that the extended family is robbed in to bring in the support that they will need to. That's part of your job anyway. It's the social workers, you should know that already. And then the sixth thing that will might shock you, when you move to England is to discover that, because I mentioned about the diversity earlier on. Remember, so the other thing that will shock you is the food, really. A diverse society or a diverse, setup might also bring, diverse, food provisions at the end of the day. So, England is a diverse and cosmopolitan, society, like I said earlier on. And you'll find that there are a variety of cuisines and dishes from different cultures, different countries that you can enjoy, from Brazil to Togo to Morocco to Madagascar to Peru. All sorts of dishes, you can find them. And, you will find yourself enjoying some new and exotic flavors, it's the drinks, it's the spices, the ingredients, as well as some traditional and classic ones, So it's easy for you to actually immerse yourself in that, melting pot of cultures and stuff like that. And you might also encounter some strange, sometimes unfamiliar foods. I never knew about haggis apart until I came to England, and when I visited Scotland, I had to, dip in and try to also enjoy myself in that. So, the other thing which I found quite strange was Marmite. I mean, I'd never come across something like that. It's something which might not appeal to a taste buds, but it is what it is. Like I said, you need to learn to embrace the different, different cultures, as well as the flavors, or the food which comes up with the different cultures, really. So it's a society which causes one to be adventurous, to be curious, willing to try new things, learn to appreciate and enjoy the food culture. This was mainly when I was in London. That's when where I would actually enjoy different foods, go to different restaurants, Jamaican restaurants, Nigerian restaurants, food from South America and food from Mexico and all that. Yeah, so that's one thing as well to take note of as well. Um, right. The other thing also, the healthcare. Obviously, we've got NHS in England, which is quite good. Quite good actually, at the point of use, free at the point of use, and very subsidized medical care and treatment for all residents. But if you need private healthcare, it can be quite expensive. Even for those with health insurance, it can be quite expensive. I remember when I tried to get a quotation for private medical care, I was quoted almost £200 per month. So you can imagine that's quite a lot. If you're coming from countries where you can enjoy good private health care at a nominal cost, wow, it might be different. But the good thing is, obviously, NHS is free at the point of use, and basically almost anything that you need, you can always find it there. All right, so point number 8. All right, is the social work, the way social work is practiced in England. Remember, I mentioned about how standardized and how regulated it is. So that's one thing that you'll also find. It's so standardized, so regulated, and the profession is so developed in such a manner that you know there are procedures to follow on almost anything that you do as a social worker. So you need to be mindful of that as well, to make sure that you are able to navigate that as well. And in terms of how one can become a social worker, it's quite different from where I was practicing, in Africa, where you would need to go to university, get your degree, or get your diploma, and all spend all this time to, 4 years to be a social worker. Whereas here, for people who have got first degree in another field, you can always do your masters in 18 months. Boom, you are done. Then you do your SYE, and then you are a qualified social worker. And there is also an apprenticeship route for people who want to, qualify as social worker. So that's something which I don't remember there was an apprenticeship route when I was studying in Zimbabwe. So there are various routes as to one may take to be a qualified social worker, really. Through the postgrad route, when you do your postgrad in social work, you can be a qualified social worker, or you also do your apprenticeship, and then you can be a qualified social worker. So that's one thing also which surprised me, really. So in terms of social work as well, you might find yourself inspired by the values, principles, standards of the social work profession, like I mentioned earlier on, as well as the skills, knowledge, and experiences that you come across in terms of, obviously, because you've been interacting with social workers with, trained and practiced in many other different countries. So it's like a melting pot of, social work profession and such. So it's easy for you to find yourself, to encounter yourself, or to encounter in some issues, some dilemmas or ethical dilemmas, really, and be operating in some legal frameworks that that may question your own beliefs. That's something that you need to learn to adapt and work in, really. There will be also some organizational constraints if you're working for a local authority which has got budget constraints, for example. To an extent, this can be so complex and demanding, really. So it's something that we need to be aware of. So what do I mean by that? You need to be competent, you need to be ethical, you need to be reflective, and you need to learn to appreciate, and then to appreciate what the work that you are doing and the changes that you're going to be bringing to the service users that you are working with, really. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit about culture showcase, the last point I'm gonna be giving today. The community kind of feeling that you have in Africa, where we say, it takes a village to raise a child, is kind of different here. I think I mentioned it earlier on. You may find yourself, feeling excited, curious, and enthusiastic at first, but you know, when you also dig deeper into the way of life, sometimes it's quite different from what you are used to. So those are some of the things that might shock you to an extent. You know, like I said, it's easy for siblings from the same household not to even see eye to eye, or they don't talk to each other. And some of the things do fester from the time when they are young and stuff like that. And then if they grow apart, for example, somebody moves from England, goes to live in Scotland, or goes to live up north, and they just lose touch, and then that's it for the years and years. They don't even talk to each other, and so it's easy for you to walk into a household, and then they will tell you, oh no, it's only me who is living in England. The rest of my family, they are in whatever country, and we don't talk, or we don't, we don't even see eye to eye, even if they live in the same city, but they don't talk to each other. It's possible. So those are some of the things which actually shocked me when I came to England. Coming from a village like lifestyle in Africa. With those few words, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning to this channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe and hit that notification bell so that